Well, I wonder if you've actually taken a look or at least heard the news this morning as to the latest happening across Trinidad and Tobago. On one hand, we see one political party with their internal elections underway. Nomination day was yesterday. The other political party, well, it had its former Attorney General and another senator that fell under it. They've now actually had charges against them dropped in a state witness tampering case. And then a current member of parliament under that political party, appeared for the first time yesterday before a judge in relation to defrauding the state, allegedly defrauding the state of taxes, motor vehicle taxes and import duties, I think amounting to over $1 million. Then there's protests in various parts of the southern land here in Trinidad and Tobago. Murder of a 15-year-old boy, allegedly by a 14-year-old boy over the weekend. And then one of the candidates vying for political leader of the People's National Movement has described Trinidad and Tobago as a nation in crisis. So his words actually hold quite a bit of water with just as how I started the show. Anyway, good morning and welcome to the program. My name is Keaton Shaw and you probably already know that. Alongside me is my co-host and colleague, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. Yes, I don't know what to say, to be honest. You know, you literally have the specter of corruption cases or even failed corruption cases. But we live in a society where do we even have trust now in the judiciary, which is supposed to be an independent third party, to be able to get it right? Is it reliable enough? It's not that, you know, we need convictions, right? Because at the end of the day, that's not what you measure a judiciary by. What you measure is the accuracy. Innocent or not found guilty, and then have to have those verdicts overturned and vice versa. Now, unfortunately, while we don't necessarily have a lot of, I don't know, it's not that we have a lot of overturned verdicts. I do think, though, that just the sheer amount of time that it takes to get anything done in the judiciary, and the fact that everybody is saying, hey, we need to clean up corruption, right? Even the politicians on both sides of the aisle saying we need to clean up corruption. But we're not actually seeing any cleanup going on. So now we have an interesting spot where we have the internal elections of one party in the midst of everything that's going on, ladies and gentlemen, including the crime situation. And most likely what we're going to see is the party faithful do what the party faithful does, and that is more or less follow the instructions of their leadership, like lemmings, to vote for whoever is picked and chosen, and you're not really going to see much of a democratic process. And then now, the rest of the country is going to say, why is it that the PNM has the same old stupid people that we've seen before, and complain, but they did not make themselves available for this part of the process from the very beginning. They left it up to the base supporters of the party to pick the candidates. So come next general election, depending on how things goes out, we're going to be stuck with the same old. All of that now, I mean, let me not waste any more time and bring in, of course, the third man on today's trio. We have with us our usual Tuesday contributor, Mr. Kemuel A.O. Pascal. I mean, what do you make of the internal elections? I don't know if this is national enough for some people, but I would even say to UNC supporters, this is important to follow. Kemuel.
Hi, Sean. Good morning, Keaton as well. Good morning to Sean. Good morning to all our viewers and listeners this morning. Well, as you all mentioned, there's quite a bit of things taking place in the country. You have the PNM internal elections, you have issues of protests, as Keaton would have mentioned before. But looking specifically at the PNM internal election, it's a race that I think a lot of people are looking at simply because the party is in government at present, and obviously you understand that things that happen in the party, while it should not and ought not to, it has the potential to affect how the government functions as a party, as a government as a whole. And so it's something that I am looking at and that side of things, and I'm also looking at the people who have thrown their hat in the ring, per se, to vie for those positions within the PNM's internal election.
Well, actually, a couple of things, Kemuel, because Sean and I were having a conversation off air before the show actually began this morning, and a couple of things to point. Yesterday we spoke on the fact that Stuart Young is now challenging for the position of chairman of the party. Foster Cummings is actually, he's going unchallenged for his position within the People's National Movement. And then you have Faris Sarawi for the Public Relations Officer. But I think what's being spoken of the most is Ronald Boynes throwing his hat in the ring, the brother of a former government minister Roger Boynes under Patrick Manning, and then Junior Barron as well. So there's Karen Nunes to share. It's a four-way fight for the leadership of the People's National Movement. But Ronald Boynes and Junior Barron, with whom, you know, I say this with utmost respect, who have been rather silent members of the People's National Movement, if I may say so. I've not heard much of them, and I don't know how active they've been in politics. How does that now, what does that paint the image of the People's National Movement? Is it that they're signaling, listen, there are troubles within the party, and we cannot and we would not allow this to continue. We need to show what's taking place, at least have a voice heard. Or is it in the other sense, as some are suggesting, to split votes?
Well, other people will look at it in that way, but I look at it in this particular way. I think it augurs well for the democracy of the party, and so not that I'm vouching for the party, but I'm saying it's good to see that people actually wanting to vie for certain positions, even though there is that preconceived notion that here's what you all really may not win, you know. But you just never know how things go here in Trinidad and Tobago. You just never know how things will turn out. Because a lot of people are saying that, like, why waste your time? But people are even asking Ms. Judiciary, why is she wasting her time? But it isn't necessarily that she's wasting her time. We don't understand, or we may not know the amount of support that she has within the party, even though a lot of people may say, well, she has been criticizing the party and the government over the last 7 years, and she probably really hasn't been working actively since she would have lost as the candidate for WMRA back in 2010. But I think it's something that augurs well for the party, and if people are willing to condemn a party, or even not just condemn but offer points of correction, I think it's important that they not just talk the talk, but they actually walk the walk, and I think that's what those other persons are proving, although they may have been silent the other two, that is.
Now, Camille, that's a very good point, but is it a true democracy when there are repercussions? For example, we saw what happened previously when Penelope Beckles challenged Keith Rowley for political leader. This was as Patrick Manning was exiting his political career. Penelope Beckles was not a part of the conversation until, I think, 2015. Sorry, not 2015, 2020, the elections in 2020. So that's a point. So what does this mean, though, for individuals like Ronald Boynes, for Junior Barron, even for Karen Nunes, whom their membership may not be revoked? But as somebody was pointing out last week on the program when Karen was here, they haven't seen or heard Karen in any event or activity as it relates to the People's National Movement, even under her former constituency. I made the argument, maybe because she simply was not allowed to.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct in saying that. Maybe that's the case. I mean, we aren't fully sure. But the thing about it is that one thing that I can recall from her even speaking on television, not just on here on our network, but also in other places, she has always maintained that she is a member of the PNM. And so even as a commentator looking on, for me, it's that she has maintained that here's what I am criticizing the government, but I'm also offering suggestions. It's not that she has just criticized the government and has stood outright in not in support of the government, but she has offered suggestions, and so I think her suggestions come from a good place if you know her as an individual. And so this is not me vouching for, but this is me saying that if someone is able to talk and is able to criticize and to offer suggestions, then they should be willing to put their money where their mouth, and I think that's important that people recognize that she has in fact done that. If it's a case where she was just talking and she didn't actually put herself forward, then I could understand why people would criticize and say, well, she really hasn't been part of the party, or she has just been criticizing. But I think it's important that she has actually shown that here's what I'm not just going to speak up or offer suggestions, but I'm actually going to put my money where my mouth is.
I think one of the things we need to understand too, that caller is looking at things in a very shallow and one could even say potentially naive perspective. If you are a member of the former outgoing administration, right? And then we saw Penelope Beckles, one of the reasons why she lost was Keith Rowley. He challenged for leadership. He had a very contentious relationship with Patrick Manning towards the end. I would argue that to some extent he contributed to the fall of that administration to some extent. And all of his rhetoric before the snap election was very confrontational. And then when the snap election was called, he was, you know, he had to go and do the basics. Yes, great as the PNM, we shall breathe. There was no enthusiasm from my memory in his voice for that election. Why? Because at the end of the day, the writing was on the wall. All right, and the party was ready to go with Rowley because he was positioned as the internal opposition to Patrick Manning at the end of the day. So Karen now is an outsider to that situation. She's not going to necessarily have the capacity to participate with party function. Why? Who will invite her from the party? That's how politics works. You don't even have to say it. A lot of it could be understood. Hey, that's a Manning person. But Manning, people had to leave the party, some of them, because they felt as though there was no place for them anymore once that transition happened.
And then some of them actually joined Keith Rowley.
Some did,
yeah,
but not all.
Many did, yeah. But Camille, you were stating something.
Yeah, and the point that Sean was making, he's absolutely correct in saying that it was a case where they had just lost a general election. You're not talking about a local government election or internal election. You're talking about someone who went up, your former Minister of Finance, who went up, would have lost her seat in terms of she was the first ever member for WMIRA back in 2007, and then going up again in 2010, she lost. She is known to be a Patrick Manning loyalist, as she herself has said, and then now you're obviously not going to see her being that person coming out to be really and should be part of the party going forward from 2010 onwards, because you have Keith Rowley challenging Patrick Manning when they had their internal elections in June 2010. He came out successful. He wasn't really seen as one that was well favored within the PNM, and he wasn't necessarily a favorite of Mrs. Nunez Teixeira. So I don't buy the argument from people that, well, she wasn't apart from the party. But the point that Sean is making is absolutely correct.
I think also what we must acknowledge, gentlemen, is what we're seeing now within the People's National Movement. And I think it would be remiss of us if we weren't to actually express what I think is becoming more and more obvious. Whilst the party may not have the cracks internally that is publicly displayed as we've seen in other political parties, you know, you've actually seen the disputes within other political parties become more and more publicized. Within the People's National Movement, that has not been the case, but the People's National Movement right now are in a weak position in the sense that because of their governance and their management, the party needs shifting away. I think also there's an irony in this, because Keith Rowley has actually led the PNM to this position, but at the same time he's probably the strongest candidate to be the leader of the People's National Movement. And I'm not speaking in terms of intellect, or I'm not speaking in terms of his ability to be a prime minister. I'm actually speaking in the sense that who individuals might see as the most suitable to be the face of the party, given his nature and his characteristics. I think the PNM is a party not falling apart, but certainly in the 60 years of an independent Trinidad and Tobago, it is in its weakest position ever. And I'm even speaking about, yes, we have to consider NAR and what happened back then. But considering how times have changed and shifting fortunes and the position of Trinidad and Tobago no longer being that nation that is wealthy in terms of oil and gas, and our inability to move away from oil and gas, all of that is part of the equation that has led the People's National Movement to this position. And I think the only reason, he stated it, and let's not underplay this in any sense, the only reason why Keith Rowley is going up for political leader is not because he wants to be political leader. And quite frankly, I don't know if he deserves to be political leader, but it is simply because he is currently the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago.
We can't say what his true intentions are at the end of the day. We don't know to what extent he's reversing his stance because of his own personal ambitions. We just don't, right? That said, I do somewhat believe that it's a bit more than just personal ambitions why he's going to have to do things he does. Here's the thing. I would always say that he might be one of the strongest candidates that out of all of the politicians currently in Parliament. Why? Because the politicians in Parliament, for the most part, are the ones with track records, right? Whichever position they're in. people who challenge from the outside don't necessarily have the current track records of what are we going to do in these specific challenges. And right now, if the PNM is at the weakest that it's ever been, which is arguable, I'm not entirely sure how true that is.
Well, it's one of the weakest it's ever been.
Right. I would equally say the UNC is just as bad, and this goes back to what I always say. It's a race to the bottom. How is it that neither party could capitalize on mistakes of the other? Because both sides currently have some significant accusations of corruption hanging over various members.
But also, just remember, as we go to the commercial break, just bear in mind how Tobago politics works. We don't vote. People say they vote for change, they vote for this, they die hard for this party. Again, politics in Tobago history will show that we vote parties out. We don't vote parties in. So as much as we're making the argument that the United National Congress is weak, which I agree with, I agree with. They had the internal elections recently. We had a whole debate about that on this program. The more weak the People's National Movement becomes, or the more weak their governance and management becomes, even if internally and at the face of it, the United National Congress is weak, their chances become stronger. Simply because of the voting pattern and voting
stronger
nature.
Doesn't mean strong, but...
Stronger.
Yes.
Stronger. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we take a break on the program now. When we return, we'll continue the conversation this morning as to what's taking place here in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll be right back.
I had this accident last year, so it is more convenient for me now to move about with the carts. I can move about to the lanes properly. Here is the only place I could shop conveniently with my budget. Everything I get it here at a convenient price. I just get specials on butters and whatever, so it will be convenient for me. Their prices is very low compared to other supermarkets. It's a really nice place to shop.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
In a hurry, check those guys' hardware. 42 Front Street, Woodbrook. Call 750-7244. Open Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sundays and public holidays at 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Diwali is in the air again, and Royal Castle reminds you to try its yummy veggie burger. The Royal Castle veggie burger is great on its own or in a combo with a side and a 16-ounce drink. And it's healthy too. A nutritious patty made with oats, lentils, chana, potatoes, and carrot inside a soft bun with tomatoes and lettuce. So for this season, try the Castle's tasty and healthy veggie burger. Shubh Diwali from Royal Castle.
Welcome back to the program. Now, as we continue and we go across to Kemuel to give his response, let me just say, gentlemen, that there will be those who may disagree with us in terms of our political opinions, as we are political commentators. However, we cannot be ignorant to the fact that history, you can judge based off of history, and you can judge based off our current positioning. So let's bear that in mind as we continue this debate. But Kemuel, the strength of the political party, that is very much debatable and arguable. Some might say, well, it's the strongest it's been under Keith Rowley, considering everything that he's faced as Prime Minister. He came out of COVID-19 and still won the election, handling the pandemic. Oil and gas he hasn't had the privilege of a healthy economy as other governments, and he's still there. So certainly it's a strong position. Others have made the argument, such as myself, stating that, listen, I think in the history of Trinidad and Tobago and in the context of things as they are now, they're certainly in a weak position.
Yeah, And if we're being real, as you mentioned, he hasn't really enjoyed what other leaders may have enjoyed in terms of an economy. But looking at the party as a whole and looking at Kejrawali from becoming the political leader from in June 2010 to where the party is at now, me speaking to my sources, I understand that what we see is there's a lot more behind what we see. And so I beg anybody to challenge me and tell me different, that the party isn't in a weakened state right now currently as a party. You just look at the amount of persons that are vying for position. They may not be vying for the position of the leader simply because they understand that there can be certain repercussions. But if you look at the amount of people that have that, and we'll get the official list today based on from the PNM's election committee in terms of how many people are vying for and what positions they are vying for. But the party is at a weakened state. You look, there are so many factors that can tell you that. And yes, I know people would say, well, the PNM has been an institution and they've been here in Trinidad and Tobago since before independence or after independence or whatever. But the party is certainly at a weak state right now. You look at there just recently, you had the budget and you see how disconnected they are from the people, just based on the utterances out of the various ministers. And the Prime Minister himself would have admitted that to a particular newspaper just this week. Yeah, he says everybody is on edge, meaning that even the responses from his government ministers, just based on the country at present in terms of what they are dealing with, is not really what they want. So it shows that level of disconnect. So the party is at a weakened state.
I think. I mean, this is true in America. I don't know how true it is in the UK or other British Westminster parliamentary systems, but for a party to win a third term in America, I'm not sure if it has ever happened. It's very difficult to happen. Even the Democratic Party after Obama, by his second term, I mean, you see approval polls trending downwards, right? As much as I and all will say that there were some good decisions made by the government with regards to the whole situation for the last 3 years, it is understandable that the public will slowly but surely get tired of the current administration. And instead of potentially understanding what that means, the challenge of trying to get elected for a third term, whether it is being led by Kejrawali or not, it seems as though they just want to, I don't know if it's this selfish, they want to hold on to their own individual position and don't want to necessarily look to what's best for the party or for the country, more importantly. But at the end of the day, also, even if it is unfair, even if when you peel back and get full perfect information and you look at the pandemic response and you look at the economic crisis response and you say, hey, they did more good than bad, whether it's because of their poor communication, or whether it's because of whatever biases and other situations that is causing people to have a bias against them hanging over their heads, whatever it is, or just the fact that it is unfair, but when you claim to be the people in charge, you're going to take flack for when things goes wrong, whether it is directly your fault or not. And they're going to have to face that. And instead of trying to do whatever is necessary to improve their position, it seems as though they're somewhat doubling down on individuals who, in some cases, they're the ones that cause us to have the most questions on political shows like this or any sort of media platform where any sort of analysis has to be contained. And I'm not talking about the opposition's political statements. I'm talking about just people on the outside looking in. Right? You cannot say that things are all fine here and everything is going in a great direction. It's very difficult to say that. And more importantly, again, it might be unfair. It might be. But what the people are feeling, the NAR, technically, I believe everybody will say they did, generally speaking, the right things. And even by doing the right things, they were voted out after 1 term.
But also, if we're putting 2001 aside for a moment, you're mentioning in the context of Trinidad it was difficult to win a third term, but there's no other political party that has won a second term besides the People's National Movement. Again,
and how long ago was that?
I am putting just in 2015 and 2020. That's the most recent.
Besides the recent one, how long ago was the next one?
Patrick Manning, right?
Yeah.
Putting aside 2001, which is again, everybody has their opinion on 2001 and 1818 and A.N.R. Robinson, Bastille Panay, and Patrick Manning.
Right.
No other political party in Trinidad and Tobago has won a second term other than the People's National Movement. So you made a good example, but in the context, the People's National Movement has had consecutive terms as compared to all other political parties.
That's why I say it's a race to the bottom.
The other side that I'm looking at, and we're stating internally, that the party is weak, and even in terms of public relations, because that's why it's interesting. Faraz Sarawi has been given positions before. So look at local government. He was given that position, quite frankly, because the man could talk. And the man is willing to go there and cut trees and do all the public relations stunts and whatnot. It's the same thing that we're probably going to see now that he's going up for public relations officer of the People's National Movement. So to me, that is more of a strategy, a strategic move, rather than him actually probably wanting to be there. He was probably told, listen, you should be PRO or you have to be PRO.
He wants to be there.
Right?
He wants to be there. I believe he wants to be Minister of Communication.
I think Faraz Arari wants to be Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago.
Eventually.
Right? But putting that aside for a moment, internally, I've heard from sources within the People's National Movement that government ministers, members of the Executive Council, members of Parliament that fall under the People's National Movement are not only afraid to talk to Keith Rowley, they're afraid to talk about Keith Rowley, right? There are people within the People's National Movement that are afraid of Keith Rowley, his own cabinet ministers. I've heard that from multiple sources. And whilst I am in no position to say that is absolutely true, you will never be able to tell whether or not that's absolutely true. The mere fact that I've heard that from many sources lends it some credence. If they are fearful of their own political leader, that is a huge, huge issue within a party. And I've heard other things as well. I think we all heard that Roshan Parsaram wanted to resign, the Minister of Health, and the Prime Minister did not allow that.
You mean the Chief Medical Officer?
The Chief Medical Officer. But I also heard Rohan Sinanan, who I've been told is Keith Rowley's right-hand man, wanted to resign, didn't even want to go up for any position in the elections in 2020. And again, was refused. His resignation was refused by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. So all of that is probably building up within the party. I mean, every time I hear Terence Yal Singh say the Honorable Prime Minister, which is every other line that he uses, I don't think he's doing that just for the public relations of it, you know. I think he has to do that. Kemuel.
Yeah, and I say that to say all things, because all my sources have said that the party is not in a good position internally. All my sources, and I have very, very credible sources when I say my sources. So everything that Keaton has said in terms of his sources, I am sure that he is correct, and I have no reason to doubt him. And so you should have no reason to doubt me as well, because the party is in a good place internally. So it's going to be an interesting internal election, because while people may share the view that many people, those people should not have gone up against Kid Rowley, they should have just allowed him to remain, because people will look at the party from the outside and look at the perception and what. And so what? People need to run for certain positions to show how the party is, the type of footing that the party is on. The party is going into a local government election, which I feel may very well push until it could be pushed, which is in, I think, about March 3rd or somewhere there next year. Yeah. So we may not even see local government elections this year, but we may very well see it next year, because they will be coming off the heels of their internal elections, which is really ends on December 4th when they have the convention, and then thereon they will be going into internal elections. So it's going to local government election, sorry. So it's going to be an interesting time to see how local politics looks going forward.
I mean, meanwhile, there are other positions being challenged. And the way how the internal politics seems to be going this time, I know in the past, even if the political leader, Mr. Manning, had a candidate that he favored, he was not necessarily going to push to make sure that that person did not go through and say, no, you don't get to challenge my candidate has to be the guy. Right? I know that for a fact, at least in one instance, so take what you will. But now I have no reason to suspect that is an ongoing thing within the party. So now that we're seeing challenges, not just to minor positions, but for the chairmanship, not for the general secretary, which is interesting, but that's a whole other kettle of fish, right? Essentially, there are at least two groups that are more or less going up challenging for positions that are supporting each other or identify with each other. And the question is now, look, they're stepping out. They're stepping out of the internal machinery to some extent, right? They're challenging others who are the nominated or who are basically under the umbrella of the political leader or who support the political leader. So this is a sign. Will we see more down the line, whatever the results are for the internal, will we see more signs of internal challenges, so to say? I'm not entirely sure because the results might quash it, but then that might not necessarily be a good thing for the PNM moving forward.
Well, yeah, and tie that back to what Kemio just said about local government elections being stretched until March 3rd, when it's due by March 3rd. I agree. I don't think we're going to see local government elections this year at all. I don't. I think if Faris Sarawi becomes public relations officer of the People's National Movement, they're going to stretch this out for as long as they can, up until March 3rd.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, is he a government minister that has enough substance to what he has delivered? Because...
Hold on. Before you even continue, I will answer your question by asking you, which government minister has any substance at all to what they've done? The difference between all the other government ministers and Faris Sarawi, right? And by no means am I trying to defend this gentleman at all. But give him where it is due. Fitzgerald Hines to a certain extent and Colm Imbert to a certain degree. Faris Sarawi has the gift of the gab. He has the gift of the gab. That is exactly why he's in the positions which he is in right now.
Yeah, but the flip side to that is he has also, his gift of the gab has gotten him into trouble more often than not. He has even contradicted himself. He has even publicly gone against his own positions on his own policies.
But where is he now?
Now he is potentially demoted from the post of Attorney General, right? And he is the local government minister for a situation where a lot of UNC corporations are looking at central government, and I don't know how the PNM is going to win any ground. Any ground. Even PNM local corporations, they're not going to say it, but they have had issues with funding as well, right? And given the last flood response, for lack of a better term, it did not necessarily look very inspiring. And if this is going to be the continuation of the trend with regards to disaster relief for local government jurisdictions, they could extend it to June the 6th if they want. I don't know if they're going to necessarily improve their position.
I will disagree with you on the basis that I wouldn't be so hard and fast to say that the People's National Movement will not gain any ground. I'm not going to be very hard and fast to say that, because even if the public is feeling this way, bear in mind, there are still loyal supporters, and this is why I am waiting to see the result of this internal election before I look at local government elections.
They have corporations that have not been given almost 50%.
No.
We're talking 45% of their budget allocation for last year, which is gone.
That is fine. That is fair. I am simply stating I am looking at this internal election before making any judgment on the local government election. And after that, I'm also looking at this internal election and local government elections to see what might happen in general elections, because it is not out of the picture to say that elections could be called before 2025. I don't think it's premature to make that statement right now as we currently stand. Kemiel, your final thoughts?
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct in saying that. You just don't know how the way how things go and the way how things can happen. It's nothing that can't happen. The Prime Minister get up today and say he wishes to dissolve Parliament and sends up something to the President, and Parliament is dissolved, sign it, and then he calls an election date. That's just how things can work. But it's a matter for us. It's something that we should certainly look at. Not just the party itself, but we also need to look at things on the UNC side, because they are also going to try and capitalize on whatever infighting there is on a public basis within the PNM going forward, and they will point out weaknesses that is within the government and will try to show up the government in some way and the PNM as a party So it's interesting to see how things go with the internal election and also local government election coming up whenever the dates will be called.
Well, as we conclude, I will end by stating, and again, feel free to disagree with me, gentlemen, or call us when you call in later. Other political parties in Trinidad and Tobago have depended on the PNM being in a weak position in order for them to gain strength. On the other hand, the People's National Movement Party has not had to rely on other parties being weak. Because regardless of where they are right now, they still have a stronghold. And bear that in mind. Let's debate how that is the case and how that is the nature of politics here in Trinidad and Tobago. Anyway, let's take a break now on the program. When we return, well, oh boy, gentlemen, a very healthy debate this morning. We'll be right back after this.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, is for all of us in public.
It's Diwali time again, and that means delicious vegetarian cuisine. Chief has all your herbs and spices for Diwali. Curry, jeera, saffron, garam masala and more for all your tal curry. Cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, ginger and cardamom for those delectable sweets. Brown rice, dal and chana for those tasty delicacies. And of course, Chief baking powder for soft and light roti. This Diwali, remember, the chief reason is always taste.
In a hurry, check those guys' hardware. 42 Front Street, Woodbrook. Call 750-7244. Open Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sundays and public holidays at 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Today I'm excited because we're talking about medicine the Gray's way. Yes, we're talking to Dr. Raquel Supir from Gray's Medical.
Because now I realized, like, the secret, the key. If you give somebody the body they want or the confidence that they're looking for, and you make sure that they know that they have to work really hard to keep it, guess what? They're going to be really healthy.
Tell us a little bit about stretching and the importance of what it is or what it does to your body.
It is really important to stretch your muscles. You can stretch before and after working out. It can limit or reduce your injury, also able to improve your flexibility.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to the program. So now we're going to speak about a topic which which may seem odd to you, but there's so many ways that you can link it to the reality of our current state of affairs here in Trinidad and Tobago. Box Lunch, the National Schools Dietary Services Limited, a state-owned entity that provides both boxed breakfast and lunch meals for students in primary and secondary schools across Trinidad and Tobago, roughly 820 of them. On a daily basis, they supply just about 130,000 meals. And in this year's budget, they actually received $181.1 million more than in 2021. Now, just bear in mind that we went through a COVID-19 pandemic and a lot of students were at home. Hence I think you would call this the food boxes that were being distributed. That was one of the programs initiated because students were home. Anyway, putting that aside, there's actually been a 20% increase in the demand for boxed breakfasts and boxed lunches. And why is this topic important? Not only because students have now returned to school, but due to unemployment, underemployment, the state of affairs as it relates to the economy here and socio-economic conditions. But also bear in mind that because students are now back out and they're all full-time and there's been a 20% increase, the cost of food has simply gone up to the extent where parents are barely able to handle their household and their household affairs. They're just holding things together by strings. All of this are factors to consider given our current times. And, well, once more, education gets the largest share of the budget. But we have a problem. Because as much as we're trying to move away from state dependency and state subsidies and all these programs, in many areas, we're going to see an increase. We've seen it for social development, and now we're seeing it in education for programs such as this. Camille, you and I had a very brief conversation yesterday over this, and as much as it may seem such as a small thing, a very minor news article, I think it plays a much bigger role in showing us where Trinidad and Tobago is.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. As you mentioned, it's based on the article and how many lunches and breakfasts they say are provided on a daily basis. It comes up to a figure of somewhere almost 130,000 accommodation on a daily basis spread out across both Trinidad and Tobago. And as you would have mentioned, there has been an almost 20% increase in the amount of persons requiring or the demand for breakfast and lunch. And so it would have gone up by some in fiscal 2023. They asked for $270,000, $270 million. Yeah, $746,800. So, which is an increase of almost 1.181 million, over almost $200 million more in fiscal 2023 as opposed to fiscal 2022 when it was just 88.9 million. So there obviously is a demand for breakfast and lunch with schools resuming and more persons coming back out, and just based on the fact that persons who would have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of being laid off from their jobs and that kind of thing. So it's something that I think the government should take stock of, and I say this because you don't want this to be a precursor to persons ending up in a state of poverty, because I think it's a matter of the government should do a further studies in terms of a further research in terms of how many of those people actually are able to eat after they go home from school. Because remember, that's just between the hours that they are in school. It could be that they are in an even worse position when they go home. So I think it's something that we should take stock of, and the government should conduct some form of study to understand, analyze the data that is available to them.
Some of the social relief that we need right now, I mean, the pandemic, we needed pandemic relief in some form or the other, right? With the flooding, we do need some flood relief. Now the question is, do you give flood relief to people who built on land that they did not get approval for, etc., etc.? There's a lot of complications or complexities, but the general idea of flood relief, to some extent, we probably should not question. However, things like box lunches, food lunches, gas subsidies, other subsidies that are ongoing. We're not talking about momentary relief for an emergency situation. We do have to question to what extent could we afford to continue doing this, because even with OPEC's decision to try to cut supply by, I believe, 2%, oil prices went down on Monday, right? We could be seeing energy revenues slowly but surely go down, right? We might enjoy decent revenues now, but will we even enjoy decent revenues before the next budget? Or will it go down before the end of the next financial year? Meanwhile, the manufacturer of the world, China, their economy is in a bit of a mess, in part because of their zero COVID policy. They're still dealing with COVID-19 over there. It's actually a strange. It's strange how it worked out. Their zero COVID policy means that the threat of COVID, in some extent, never has really gone away in China. And it's affecting manufacturing of goods. It's affecting trade. The global village. If you went and did economics within the last 20 to 30 years, you would have heard the global village and international trade and specialization, blah, blah, blah. That model might actually be slowly becoming a thing of the past. And these things matter to TNT. Because it's going to now mean that we're going to have to rethink our economic place in the world, how we're going to earn foreign exchange, who are going to be our major trade partners. We import all our food. Are we still going to be able to get it all from America? Could we afford it? Etc., etc. We have a window. It's a race. I said it the same thing with COVID. It's the same thing now. Before things get worse, we have to use this window to try to put the infrastructure in place, and it might not actually be physical infrastructure. It could be systems. It could be new processes of doing things. It might be better education that actually matters and not just getting people to pass SEA. Whatever. Figure out a way so that people could see about themselves better, so that we don't have to now go into this trap, because if we don't improve the economy, to improve opportunities for people to enrich themselves, right? The amount of people that have to be fed or helped is going to only grow.
Well,
and then that becomes untenable. That's unsustainable,
well,
right?
It is unsustainable. It's actually quite worrying because, as I said, social expenditure has gone up. Obviously, it has gone up. But that system is completely flawed as far as I'm concerned, because I've learned that anybody could walk in to the Ministry of Social Development, any of their offices, and apply for a disability grant. You just need to be walking with a cane. Anybody could do it. You could walk with a cane and get that. But you're right. Oil, that's why I keep saying $92 per barrel of oil is rather ambitious in terms of the pricing based on the budget. I said that before. What is interesting is that this increase in budget also shows that the government is not only seeing the demand, but also the increase in food prices. Nutrition security, put aside food security for a moment. I honestly think we've exhausted that topic. It's very, very important. We'll bring it up. But nutrition security is extremely important. And you're going to see a lot of kids from impoverished households. Some of them can't even afford to go to school. And some of them, their parents put absolutely everything into them being able to go to school. But according to this, this article, information received says a lunchbox costs $9 TT. This is the contractor. The contract states that a box lunch costs $9 TT and $6.63 for a breakfast box. All right? With 25% of all meals, the base of those meals, 25% are local products. So 75% is imported. All right? So even within that itself, because think about it for a moment, right? Everybody used to enjoy the days of when box lunch used to come and it had roti and chana and aloo and all that, right? Camille, I see a smile, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The lines for box lunch were long. Everybody in the school wanted box lunch that day. But as much as roti is part of Trinidad and Tobago's diet, and certainly everybody in Trinidad and Tobago likes roti. If you don't like roti, I don't know where you're from. But, you know, everybody in Trinidad and Tobago likes roti. Where does the flour come from? You know, that's important as well. So this, to me, is a situation which is going to get bigger and bigger. And that is why I said, following budget 2022-2023, the mid-year budget review next year, in which finances, more allocations are made to various ministries, keep an eye on little things, such as box lunch, or box meals for schools, which paint a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Camille.
Yeah, let me just add quickly. I think that's what I was mentioning before. It's important that the ministry that has responsibility for this, and also the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, that they collaborate with the Ministry of Education to have some form of survey done. Because I remember when I was going to school, they used to do things like that, and get an idea as to how people are falling below the breadline. Because as I mentioned, you understand that while a child is at school, they have the breakfast, they have the lunch. But what happens after that child heads back home? They're heading back into a situation.
Camille has frozen there.
The family services can in fact offer to those families.
Camille, could you just repeat that point? Sorry, we lost you for a moment.
Sure. So I'm saying it's important that the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Social Development collaborate so that they can understand that they can have some form of data to understand by way of service, understand where they can channel their support for those families, because it can't be that funding from the Ministry of Social Development is just channeled.
You know, I'm sorry to laugh, but all right, okay. Whilst we are waiting for Camille's return, let me just mention, I will acknowledge, and I have to, because I have to be fair in stating that there are some students or even some families who can actually afford to send their children to school with meals, but still go and take box lunch. And to me, I think that is unfair, because you are depriving a child. It happens on a daily basis. I remember that they implemented a chit system. You have to have a number, and your number was registered with a dean in the school. Your name had to be on a list. And sometimes I used to see teachers and administrative staff going and taking box lunch before lunchtime, before students would line up. I saw that taking place all the time. So those are other factors to consider as well. And I hope schools become more observant to that, because if you can, in these times, I know it is very difficult, but if you can afford a meal, all right, and if you're able to go to school with a meal, please do that, because there are others out there who are less fortunate, others out there who are really struggling, others out there who are in need of it, and at times they simply can't get it.
I think Camille's point is important. We have to understand that one, and your point, they're not mutually exclusive. They have to be done together. One, we have to put more help for those that really need it. But those that don't need it, it has to be brutally cut off if necessary, right? Because we can't afford to just give away free things. Hey, everybody knows about freeness, right, in this country, right? Even now, I know of a situation where government employment is, for all intents and purposes, money for almost no productivity. So these things, we can't afford it. I've said we can't afford it, but the practices don't seem to be ending, because we don't necessarily have people with either the courage or the wisdom to figure out how to right the ship so that money goes where it needs to go, not just gets scattered about randomly, right? And for the sake of saying, well, people need help and people need jobs, so we just make it a free-for-all like Gates. And then when the dust settles, wonder, well, what went wrong? I don't understand. You don't? No, because we did it sloppily.
Like I said, Sean, if you were to just walk into the Ministry of Social Development with a cane, right? Just walk in with a cane, you're getting assistance, you're getting grants. There's no actual stringent approach to the system. There's no checks and balances, right? Because those same people who walk into the Ministry of Social Development walking with a cane, walk out with a cane under their arm. And I've witnessed that many a times, and it is honestly frustrating me. It is really, really frustrating me.
And the thing we need to realize is, just because it's one time, you really don't see the full extent of how many times.
No.
And how many other areas similar things happen.
How many other areas. Anyway, folks, listen, we now break for news on the hour. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Corruption charges discontinued against Anand Ramlogan and Gerald Ramdeen. Opposition welcomes discontinuance of charges. AG stunned by judgment. Karen Nunes Teixeira says there's a sense of discomfort in the election process. And internationally, death toll rises in Venezuela landslides. Now for the details. Corruption charges have been discontinued against former Attorney General Anand Ramlogan and former UNC Senator Gerald Ramdeen. According to the DPP, Roger Gaspard, the King's Counsel is not willing to testify against the duo. While the UNC stands firm in its position that the malicious political harassment and wicked persecution of the UNC and its supporters by this dictatorial and evil government is a clear and present danger to the rule of law and our democracy. Opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar said that biased police investigations that are designed to feed into the PNM's political narrative that the UNC is corrupt will be exposed. The opposition welcomes the discontinuance of the charges against former Attorney General Anand Ramlogan and former UNC Senator Gerald Ramdeen about allegations in the Vincent Nelson matter. They see this as the tip of the iceberg of PNM corruption and conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and will be relentless in their pursuit of the truth so that justice can be done. Well, the discontinuance of the criminal charges has come as stunning to the Attorney General Reginald Amor, who said he's surprised more so as the DPP's decision is predicated upon an indication by the state witness Vincent Nelson that he does not intend to give evidence pending the determination of civil proceedings he brought in the High Court against the state. The AG said the discontinuance is also surprising, having regard to the fact that Nelson entered into a plea agreement with the DPP to give evidence against Ramlogan and Ramdeen in exchange for a recommendation by the Director of the High Court that Nelson be given a non-custodial sentence. Mr. Nelson has not, to date, recanted any admission of wrongdoing he made in the criminal proceedings. On to some other news now. PNM leadership hopeful Karen Nunes Teixeira says there remains a discomfort in the way the elections would be managed.
It gives you a sense of discomfort and it makes you feel uneasy, and I don't think transparency and accountability.
In international news now, the number of people killed has risen to 36 and 56 others are missing after landslides swept away their homes in the Venezuelan town of Las Tejerías. About 1,000 emergency personnel are taking part in search and rescue operations. President Nicolas Maduro has declared 3 days of national mourning. Among those killed are 2 toddlers, local media said. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for watching.
Saturday, November 5th, Shore Park, Tobago. It's Million Laughs Caribbean Comedy Commerce, the mega laugh festival to end the Tobago Carnival season, featuring Tobago's finest in folklore and musical entertainment, together with some of the Caribbean's top comedians, Larry Joseph, Daryl the Saint Mendoza, Dolores, Alan the Entertainer, Handsome Sun, Mako Media, and more. Get your ticket specials available on Island E-Tickets and various outlets nationwide, or visit the Million Laughs handles for more info. It's Comedy Commerce in Tobago, a wee kind of commerce.
Welcome back to Talking Points here on WESN. Ladies and gentlemen, let us open up the phone lines one time and give you the opportunity to join us. We honestly welcome your opinions and your thoughts. If you agree with the commentary this morning, if you disagree, or if you have a varying opinion, we're more than welcome for that. If there's anything else that you wish to address, or any other, what I can say, developing situations that is taking place here in Trinidad and Tobago that you would also like to address, we also welcome that. The phone lines are open and the numbers are on your screen. In the meantime, Kemuel Avery O'Keefe Pascal has left the building. Unfortunately, whilst It may have been good timing that his internet only decided to give trouble at that point. He also had to leave at 9 a.m. So we thank him very much for his contribution this morning. And, well, if there's any questions, certainly we'll pass it on to him. And the next time, he'll be able to answer it for you. But we do have a caller on the line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I just want to give my 2 cents on the leadership of the PNM.
Sure.
I think for the PNM to come back in power, I think the leadership has to be changed. And that is the only way they're going to get back this term around in power. They need a new face because of the fact that, you know, just listen to them in the Standard Finance Committee, the responses was not very good at all. And it sounded like, you know, a jaded set of people just coming and telling people things that they don't want to hear. So I think on that basis, people are fed up, and people get fed up quickly. So that's the next factor. As pertaining to a certain judgment that was issued yesterday, I am very sorry, but the last Attorney General will have a lot of sleepless nights. And I think that is one of the main reasons why this discontinuation is a problem. Because of the guy, I think that indemnity that they agreed upon, I think he's going to sue the government for some money for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my call, and you have a very good day, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir, for your call, and thank you very much for your contribution. Have a great day. We have a call on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Morning, caller. You're live.
Hello, good morning. All right, folks, I ask kindly, when you are calling in on the program, I know in some instances people's phones have been giving trouble, and here in studio as well, our phones have been giving trouble as well at times. However, when you are calling into Talking Point, please kindly turn the volume on your television down. Turn down the volume on your television.
And stop listening to your TV, listen to your phone.
But also, what that last caller from Digger Martin, what he expressed in his opinion, that in order for the People's National Movement to win the next election, the leadership of the party has changed. And
has to change.
And though he has a point, the other question, which we actually did not get into, we probably should have with Camille, is who is the right person to lead the People's National Movement? Is it somebody who has been not as active, such as Karen Yosishera? She's been active in commentary, but not in politics.
Exactly.
Or is it somebody within the party? You know, because Stuart Young, Farisarari, Foster Cummings, they all want to be Prime Minister. Who is the best one to lead? Caller on the line with us from Shogunas. Good morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning. Good morning.
It's a pity Karen isn't here this morning, because I can't understand what is going on with this agreement we're hearing about. If you have such a thing, wouldn't it be in writing? And if it is in writing, would that fellow not have said what he did? Why can't we go ahead with the court and let him go and perjure himself? Right? I think that is the simplest way. I would really like to hear her view on it. Because if the agreement is in writing, he already put himself there. And what he mean by the government having honored their end of the bargain? If it is in writing, it's clear to look and see what they honored and what they dishonored. You have any idea?
Actually, to be honest with you, I've been following the story. I don't have any clue as to whether or not it's in writing. But as it pertains to Karen, she wouldn't be joining us tomorrow. Hopefully she'll be with us on Friday. And I'm so sorry we have to wait until then for an explanation. But what we will do is that actually we will try and get in contact with an attorney at law who has before advised Sean and I and to try and get some more information on the actual indemnity and whether or not there was a written agreement. Sorry, sir?
That's my experience. If Karen, I see her on this thing, she gives her honest view. That is why I don't understand why people continuing about this election and who likes she and who don't like she. They go look at the recommendations she has made, the comments she has made, and in the main, they are very strong. You all say that Rowley made hard decisions. What hard decision Rowley ever made in the interest of people? Name me one.
Sorry?
You all have been saying on your program a number of times that Rowley had made this hard decision. I am unaware of any hard decision Rowley made that was in the interest of the nation.
Hard decisions in the context that would have been politically unfavorable, such as the fuel subsidy.
Like what? Name me one.
Yeah, that's what I just said. The fuel subsidy is probably the best example.
Yeah, right now, yes.
Is what? Where's the best example? I didn't hear that.
The fuel subsidy having to...
It's politically unpopular.
Very, very much unfavorable. And regardless of the comments made by the Minister of Finance about they have not rioted as yet, which is rather stupid, they've continued essentially to more or less the fuel subsidy is going to be removed. But they're easing it off the nation right now. They're weaning the nation off of it. And it's politically unfavorable. But he has decided, listen, regardless of such, I'm going to do it.
I don't know of any hard decision that he made that was in the interest of people. I know none. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Kola, for your contribution. Good hearing from you. Yes, folks, as I mentioned, Karen Yunus-Shari, she would not be joining us tomorrow, unfortunately. However, she has indicated that Friday. This situation with Anand Ramlogan and Gerald Ramdeen, with the corruption case being dropped due to the witness, Vincent Nelson, King's Counsel Vincent Nelson, and the indemnity that was agreed between him and former Attorney General Faris Arawi. Again, we haven't commented on it this morning. We don't have much time to actually comment on all of it. Here's the thing. The DPP says they've dropped it because of the time of that case, how long that might take. Vincent Nelson agreed to provide evidence on the basis that his charge of misbehavior in public office would have been dropped. But I think $2.25 million in fines for his other two charges, he agreed to that, and then he agreed to indemnity. Then, what was the most interesting twist of events was Reginald Moore, our current Attorney General. His statement basically stating that this took him by surprise. So, I'm not sure how it would have taken him by surprise, because the office of the Attorney General, because even if Faris Arawi was Attorney General, it's the office of the Attorney General, should have been very much aware and should have been involved in this case. We have a caller on the line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
You three, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
I can't talk about those jokers today, maybe tomorrow. Because last night we were having a conversation about Masa Amin, the 22-year-old Iranian killed by the morality police for not wearing her hijab. So then we went on to different things like why in the world do people hurt children, then on to the horrific killing of this 14-year-old Videsh Dukran by another teen, whom, I mean, I think people said that was his friend. I'm not sure. But what in the world could he have done? Told him about his mother, something about a phone, there was talk about that. What makes people behave this way, and what creates these monsters in our country? So Senator Hazel Thompson Ahi, she's the head of the Organization on Child Rights and Restorative Justice. She said today that out of everything bad comes something good, and now is the time for us to learn to deal with minors who commit crimes. The usual stuff come together, churches, stakeholders, villages, blah, blah, blah. She normally talks sense, but she was real sticking today. Because look at Sean Luke. My stomach turns for that. 2 teens in 2006. That took 15 years.
Yeah.
She also spoke about the good old days, which sometimes gets to me because I find it really hypocritical that people pretend that life was a bed of roses and there was no rape, incest, murder, domestic violence. What they did was they turned a blind eye to so much evil because everyone was busy with their own lives. The criminals today were raised by people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They didn't drop from Keith Scotland's breadfruit tree. So it's 2, 3, 4 generations of people who are responsible for where this country is today. So that tons of people abdicated their responsibility. And yeah, before I go on too much, Keaton, I'll just stop there for now. So that includes schools, churches, villages. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's an important point to note. Prosecuting kids that commit violent acts, serious violent acts against other children, particularly when it comes to murder. Well, to some extent, we kind of, there's no, is it really justice? Because the child that died, that's gone. That can be taken back. And we're not talking about cases where it was a gang war, or it was a crime of passion because somebody cheated on somebody, or we're talking about something got into a child's mind. I'm going to brutally murder a peer. And the fault of that has to come from somewhere else. If it's very rare, if at all, that a child is just going to wake up and be that evil that day. It has to build to that, and it comes down to guidance and teaching and parenting and a whole host of factors. And I do wonder to what extent we kind of take it for granted. So we could prosecute the perpetrators all we want, but a 15-year-old is dead in a manner that will horrify anybody if the victim was of any age.
I will comment on that after this call from Kirap. Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, morning. Am I on?
Yes,
you're on, yeah.
Right, okay. I want to say a good program. You two guys do a good program in the morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to speak about Ramdeen and the other guy with the case that dropped by the DPP.
Uh-huh.
The DPP had no other choice but to drop the case. But all I would say with that, who have more corn, feed more fowls. Right? That guy Nelson, he didn't just spin around one day and decide to say he's not coming forward to give evidence. You understand? Because remember, he had given a statement. So you all could see what I'm saying. Who have more corn, feed more fowl. And on the point of the fuel subsidy, we are people here now. We're so happy in this place, and we're so ungrateful. We're so happy in this place. We get spoiled over the oil revenues that we have accomplished over the years. And oil, that black gold, I remember the Jamaican Prime Minister had said that is a curse to Trinidad. We get spoiled when we should have been developing certain sectors and diversifying the economy. You think? I went down to a place called Cashew Gardens. I went to do some work with AGC at time. And I said that people putting up squatting shacks all over the place, right? So we went there as security because they were demolishing a lot of the shacks now. Right? Because it's government property.
Yeah.
And the amount of cashew I see there, and I asked the people who in the little squat, they didn't think they break it down. I said, but if you all pick up those cashew seeds, and long time we used to go and roast it and whatever, and you all could make cashew and sell. I said, look, they want that cashew. You know that place, how it get the name Cashew Garden? They planted cashew. They're supposed to sell that cashew, China and these places. It's one of the biggest producers of cashew, the cashew nuts we buy in the tin. And that cashew garden was a project, and it never come to fruition.
Yeah.
You all understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The oil has spoiled us because we're supposed to diversify the economy in so much different other areas. And we as the citizens, we come accustomed to everything they subsidize. Transportation, electricity, water, air transport, sea transport. You understand?
Yes.
BTSC. I tell you, we like spoiled children, and other Caribbean countries who doesn't have the resources that we're so blessed with, right? Which is the resources of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They make things do. And how they include Tobago people learn to do things a certain way too, Tobago is a different culture, right?
Yeah.
They hadn't had the opportunity because most of them, to start with job opportunities, as they finish school, they had to leave to come to Trinidad, right? I'm a Tobagonian. I spent most of my life in Trinidad. I was born in Tobago. I lived when I was 18. I'm 63 now, right? And the opportunities were very, very few.
Yes.
So Tobago people learn to do much with little, right? And they appreciate whatever little they get, right? So I want the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we must be appreciative of what is happening, and we're lucky to be in a place called Trinidad and Tobago. Guys, good program, and locked on and listen.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. I like that point about the cashews in particular. Yeah. We have a caller on the line with us from Dabadi. Good morning, caller.
Hello, morning.
Good morning.
Gentlemen, a pleasant morning.
Good morning.
Let me start the morning by saying wonderful program as usual.
Thank you.
You all know me as the caller from Dabadi, but my name is Clayton Blackman. I am a candidate for the PNM internal election. I'm going up for education officer.
Okay.
So let me get that out of the way. So let me just tell you guys tell you the good news.
Wonderful, sir. Congratulations and best of luck.
Sir?
No, I said congratulations and all the very best.
Thank you. And I am going very positive, and I know that I will win. All right, with respect to the topic that we're discussing this morning, with respect to the Mr. Nelson and the DPP, folks, I don't want to say much on this, but you all will know that there's a problem with our judiciary.
Yes.
And I hope that you all will comment more, and I hope you will dig deeper into it, because there are so many cases outstanding, not only with prominent people in the country, but there's a whole delay in the entire system. You have so many persons on remand for over all these years, and you know that they have implemented recently the case management, which works in other countries as like England, and for some reason it has been implemented here, and it hasn't been. Well, I've heard Paris, when he was 80, said that it is working. We have night courts, we have all kind of things, and we still end up with problems like these. And that case is being said is being discontinued. But the crux of the matter is that if Mr. Nelson decides that he's not going to take part, we have no other witness, so there's no other case. And in my estimation, that is the end of it. That is the end of it. The two persons who were charged, Mr. Ramdeen and Mr. Ramlogan, they are not saying that they're innocent, you know. They are geared towards getting off on a matter of technicality of the law.
Yeah.
Had it been you or I, or you or me, you know that we would have been going to these slammers. Gentlemen, thanks for the time. I hope you all will dig deeper into it. And the arms of government, although they say that they are separate, we all know, I mean, from Law 101, you would know that there is still some level of intertwining with these three arms.
Yes.
All right? So you guys have a nice day, and thanks for the opportunity. Again, wonderful program as usual.
Thank you very much, sir. And Mr. Blackman, all the very best to you as you contest the post of education officer in the internal election. A couple of things to comment on. First of all, this case with Vincent Nelson, Jara Ramdeen, and Anand Ramlogan. Well, the opposition leader is on a roll again because she was quick to make a media release following the Attorney General. But I just want to point out a couple of things. One, we need to examine this indemnity more. And that court matter, that's a separate court matter in itself. But also, Vincent Nelson, you remember the other two charges? He actually pleaded guilty in court. And he actually was willing to give evidence. So whilst we are not a judge, jury, or whatnot, that does not necessarily mean that Anand Ramlogan and Jara Ramdeen are innocent. You're innocent until proven guilty, right? I understand that. I subscribe to that. But yes, they were trying to get off on a technicality of the law. So that's one thing. I'm going to leave it there because I would appreciate it if we speak to a lawyer off air and we bring that information to you tomorrow, but also with Karen.
I would just like to point out, because he's supposed to have an agreement of protection for testimony. But if he doesn't testify, then shouldn't that void the agreement?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Because I think the indemnity was different to the, you see this misbehavior in public charges, and as well as the other two charges, which has been $2.25 million in fine. I think the indemnity was to guarantee that, one, he wouldn't lose money, and two, he wouldn't go to jail. So I'm not entirely sure if I need more details with respect to the indemnity.
I understand that, but at the end of the day, no testimony, no deal.
Who knows? But also, in relation to cashew gardens, caller from Cape, that's an excellent example. Cashew is not only one of the more expensive nuts that are available, but also, did you know that cashew apple is very, very good for you? And I think in many parts of Asia, cashew apple juice is enjoyed by almost everyone. In fact, it's very high in phosphorus, potassium, iron. It's very, very healthy. So it's a good example, by the way, that you made with the cashew nut, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't think about that. But it was very rare, right, to I think near the University of the Western East, the housing in St. Augustine, there was one cashew apple tree. And what's amazing about the cashew apple is that it's just that little green, what looks like the stem of the apple. That's the actual nut. So you get one nut from one apple, and people think you throw away the apple. But they use the apple, they make juice with it. It's very, very healthy. So it's a very good example. And to that caller from Digo Martin, who spoke about this child and this murder, when I heard that police were looking for a 14-year-old suspect, in this case...
I suspect that it's more than just one 14-year-old, but I could be wrong.
No, according to somebody who called the police, Dave, it's not the mother, apparently. It's somebody else who called the police to tip them off of the crime. A 14-year-old and a younger child was there. Don't know if the younger child was involved. Police are looking for the 14-year-old. All right? 14-year-old, allegedly, they suspect he shot the 15-year-old boy. So yes, we speak about our system, but the mere fact that these young children, and I know I'm probably acting oblivious and naive to probably what's very much a part of everyday living in Trinidad and Tobago. No, hold on. Shooting is one thing. But
gun violence, murder is not common.
No, it's not that. The mere fact
by a 14-year-old
that a 14-year-old is now accessing guns and these young children. That's what I said. I may be sounding naive. That is very, very, I think worrisome.
I don't think you're naive.
I don't know, boy, too shallow, weak of a word to use.
I don't think you're naive. But, and hopefully this is a one-off, right? But again, it goes back to what I said. You're not wrong to be very concerned about this, because if it's not a one-off, we really have to ask just how deep is the systemic failure, not just of our education system, but for all of our social structures. And then now it goes back to basically what we're saying, or at least what I've been saying, and you've been saying in different ways. When our parliamentary system, when our political leadership is such a waste of time, I'm just going to say it as it is. Like in the long run, the overall, yes, there are people who I might think of more highly than others, but the overall seems to be somewhat of a waste of time. But the opposition is no better than the government right now. The opposition leader's response, as you pointed out, to the corruption case being crashing and burning is very typical political whatever nonsense that really doesn't matter, calling for the other side to be investigated. Hey, clean up your own house first. But it might unfortunately start with her, so she can't do that. Same thing for the PNM. Same thing. So when we have rot at the top, do we expect the rest of the organizational systems to be healthy? Why are we surprised? This is what we vote for. We get what we vote for. That is your parliament and your government working for you.
Anyway, listen, Trinidad and Tobago is broken and flawed in many ways, but hopefully, I have hope for the younger generation that they do not necessarily follow the older generation, because you can't rely on old horses to push new carts forward, put it that way. And as we conclude, yes, think about that for a while. Think about that for a while.
I mean, you won't get very far. You won't get as far as you should.
Precisely my point.
There you go.
Anyway, folks, as we wrap things up, listen, the conversation may have been very interesting, and we've had many very debates on the program, and at times the topics are very depressing. But all in all, I really hope that today is a good day for you, for everybody around you, and we hope it's a productive day, and we hope that it leads to positive change and positive growth. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Talking Point. That's my co-host, Sean Michael Small. I'm Keaton Shaw. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day, and we'll see you again, hopefully, tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Diwali Passport, brought to you by Chatak Food Products and The Little Store Limited.
When it comes to Pira and Laddu, I just use Chatak's Laddu and Pira Mithai Mix. It's a combination of traditional ingredients in one pack. I don't spend all that time preparing different ingredients like Ma. 3/4 of the work is done. So now I can make fresh, delicious Pira and Laddu in about 15 minutes with the convenience of Chatak's Laddu and Pira Mithai Mix. Now Ma's Kitchen is a Chatak kitchen.
The Festival of Lights glows once again in many nations. Let's take a trip and find the interesting variations. Some are quiet and simple, and others filled with family and friends.